hello, and welcome to Leadership in Real Life, Raw Stories of Leading and Learning. I am your host, Erica Taylor Beck, the founder of Authentic Foundations. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Leadership in Real Life. This is Erica, and I just want to say that I am struggling a little bit with this daylight savings time. It was only an hour, but for some reason I cannot seem to want to wake up in the morning. Don't know what's going on, but here we are. So, this episode, I wanted to talk about what leadership in real life really is. When I started this podcast, it was originally a LinkedIn Live event that I was doing with other leaders that I was meeting on LinkedIn. And we were talking about specific topics around leadership in the typical corporate workspace. I then took this into a podcast and I started doing more solo episodes. And the most recent episodes I talked about were the first 90 days on the job as a manager, as well as emotional intelligence and why it's important for entrepreneurs and leaders. But I also have some ideas for where I want to take this podcast. And some of it is leadership doesn't necessarily have to be a job or a position that you have, especially in a corporate setting. Leadership is something that anybody can have and do and be. You don't necessarily have to be in a position of power to be seen as a leader. And I think that's really important for people to remember. It's not a job title, it's not something that you are promoted into necessarily. You could be an individual contributor. You could be an entrepreneur. You could be in high school. You could be in middle school, and you could still be seen as a leader if you have the right characteristics and the right qualities. There are ways that we can exemplify leadership every day in real life, not necessarily at the workplace. I think that's really important. When you think about what are those characteristics and qualities, it's influence, responsibility, taking action, accountability, and showing up and saying this was an area where I made a mistake and owning that and learning from that and doing better next time. It's being able to apologize. It's being able to ask for help. It's speaking up for people who maybe can't speak up for themselves. Maybe they're not in a position of power. Maybe they don't have the confidence to advocate for themselves. So it's looking out for other people and looking out for the best interest of others, not taking advantage, making difficult decisions when things are hard, standing up for what you believe in when it's not popular or when everyone around you is telling you that they want to go a certain direction. That's tough. That's a leader to be able to speak up on behalf of yourself and your beliefs when nobody else believes in them. It's leading by example. It's helping and inspiring others to take action, and it's working with them and supporting them, not just telling them what to do or how to do it. And we talked about emotional intelligence. It's the ability to stay calm in a crisis and under pressure to be clear about what the next steps need to be. So you don't have to be a boss. You don't have to be in a leadership role. When we talk about leadership in real life, it really can be anything and anyone that we're talking about. One thing that has come to mind recently around leadership and speaking up and standing up for what you believe in, I was recently asked what advice I would have for somebody who is in their 20s or their 30s, because I'm going to be 42 this year. And what advice would I give to somebody who's younger? And I thought about that, and what I wanted to share was make sure that you are living your life the way that you want to live it, that you're living your life for you and not for somebody else and not by somebody else's standards or expectations. And I think that is something that many of us have probably gotten caught up in at some point, is that we hear what is expected of us. We see what everybody else is doing. We buy into the belief that you graduate school, you go get a job, you work for 40, 50 years, maybe more, depending on the economy and your financial state. But then you have maybe 10, 20, maybe if you're lucky, good years to live before you're either too old and frail, or if you get sick, or if something else happens, or maybe you die younger. And we spend our entire lives working. And I understand we need to make money. I understand capitalism. And I don't necessarily think all of it is bad, but I definitely think that there is a better way that we could be doing it, where we get on this hamster wheel and we go, 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 and we keep churning and doing what we think we're supposed to be doing. And we're not happy. I would be willing to bet that many people, if you were to ask them and they really took a look at their life and considered it, that they're not happy. They might be in an uncomfortable relationship or marriage. They might be in a job that they don't feel is rewarding, developing them, where they don't feel engaged. They're just going in to get a paycheck because they have been there for so long. And there's something I heard recently too that really resonated was endurance is not the same as loyalty. You might be somewhere for 10 years. Is it because you really want to be there, or is it because you are just enduring it and you have the staying power because you think, "I already committed 10 years. Why leave now?" And why leave now is that you may have been there for 10 years, but you could have a handful of really great years somewhere else where you have more work life balance, or maybe you're making a better paycheck. Maybe you actually enjoy the people that you're working with, or that you are energized by the work that you're doing. We have this idea that has been shared with us, maybe drilled into us, might be a better way to say it, that you work somewhere, you put in your time, and you retire there. And that's not really true anymore. We don't tend to stay at the same company for 30 plus years most of the time. You're not going to get a retirement package somewhere. Typically, people are moving around from job to job. There are so many layoffs happening left and right that you might not have the opportunity to stay somewhere long enough to retire. And that's a new reality that was not the way it was maybe 30 years ago. And so we're still living by these old, outdated thought processes, and we're doing the things that we were always told to do by people who were told to do them as well, because that at some point was how things worked. Is it the way we need to be doing it now? Is this the life that you want to be living? Is this the kind of future that you want to be creating? Are these the values that you feel are guiding your life in the way that you want to be guided? Some people may really love what they're doing and they love staying at the same job forever and they're happy and they might be very comfortable in that environment, and that for them is enough. That comfort of knowing what to expect is stability, and that's something that they can live with. Great. Some people don't necessarily want the familiarity of an uncomfortable situation. I don't care that it's familiar. I don't like it. I don't want this anymore. I want something better. Even if it's new and scary and different, I want something better. And you're not going to get that if you stay doing what you're doing. It's really important for us to be the leader of our own life. We talk about main character energy. You're not just a background character, you're not a sidekick. It's your life. Theoretically, you only have one. Now, if you believe in spirituality and that you come back multiple times and live different lives, great. But typically, you don't always remember the previous lifetimes that you've had. The you that you are right now, you only live once. Are you happy with what you're doing? Are you happy with the memories that you're leaving behind for other people? Are you living your day to day in a way that you're comfortable with? Something to think about. I was somewhere for a really long time. I loved it. I loved the people. I loved the team. I loved most of the time what I was doing. But I was laid off. And when I left and had time away to not be working full time, I took a sabbatical and I realized that I wasn't as happy as I thought I was. I was happy with living in the way I thought I was supposed to be living. I was doing what I was told to do. And in that sense, yeah, I was happy. I was in a job I enjoyed and I was going to do it. But when I started to think, and it was during that job and actually at the second job right after that, where I went for a few months, where I got into this mindset of there has to be more to life than this. I get up, I go to work, and I was working full time remote. And so I would walk all the way down the hallway to my office here. I worked for many hours a day, which is one of the reasons why I ended up quitting that job was the work-life balance did not exist. But I thought, this can't be it. I get up, I work at my desk. My poor dogs are sitting in this room with me, waiting for me to not be working, which was a no-win game for them because I was working all the time. And then we would go for a walk, we would have dinner, go to bed, and get up and work. And I was sometimes working on weekends. And so there was really nothing else to life other than working. And when I wasn't working, I was thinking about working and I was stressed and I was trying to get caught up in my head mentally and thinking about how I could make things better and how I could bring positive change to my team. And it was something that really infiltrated all of my life and my marriage, my free time, everything. This cannot be it. How did we get sold this idea of a life? And we all said, yep, this is what we're all going to do. We are all on board with that. I had been working in a leadership role for a while. I had been saving money. I am also married to somebody who has an income. So I was able to take some time off, and I am very grateful for that time. But when I had that free time and I was volunteering and I was doing some self reflection, I realized how much happier I was when I didn't have this hamster wheel effect in place. And I was able to do other things and I could go outside during the day. And it sounds really silly, but when you're sitting at your desk in an office that only has one little window behind you, getting outside in the middle of the day and getting some fresh air and some sunshine on your skin felt fantastic. I could cut the grass and not have to worry about showing up sweaty to a meeting right after the middle of the day. I was able to wrap up before 7, 8 o'clock at night and have dinner at a decent time and not feel like I finished working, ate dinner, took a walk, took a shower, went to bed. I was able to have a little bit of free time in the evenings to do other things. I was able to start painting. I was in this state of thinking I was really, really happy until I wasn't in that state anymore. So I was almost forced out of it. And I'm grateful that it happened because by those events happening, I was able to reevaluate so many things and say, okay, is this what I want to be doing? I don't. I don't want to go back to that. I'm much happier. My wife was even telling me that she thought that I was much happier. And she said, I like you a lot better when you're not working at that job because you're happy and you're laughing. And I was making dinner more often. We had been using pre-made meals for a while. And so I started cooking and I started to bake and I started to be able to clean the house and not have to wait till the weekend to do it. I was able to just do normal life. And it sounds really simple. I'm not doing anything super crazy. It's not like I quit my job and I started traveling left and right and I started doing all these extravagant things. I'm just living a day to day, probably for many people, a very boring life. And I love it. I love it. I get to hang out with my dogs all day, our cats. We get to do stuff outside. We get to go for a walk. If my wife is off on a random Wednesday because that's how her schedule works, she's in law enforcement. Guess what? I can also go on a random Wednesday walk now. And we don't have to miss each other for weeks at a time because our schedules don't line up because I'm in corporate and she's not. Now I can make my schedule the way I want to. And that's fantastic. I never wanted to be my own boss, but now that I am, I'm actually really good at it. And I really like managing me because I'm a really good worker and I'm a really good leader. And so we, both sides of that, get along really well. So again, something to think about. If you're hearing this and you're thinking, wow, good for you, Erica, nobody cares, that's okay. You can move on. But if you're thinking, there's a little bit of truth in there that is in the back of my mind now, making me think, should I do something different? Should I at least consider it? If you're having even just a tickle of a thought that you're not as happy as you think you are, don't do anything rash, but just think about it. And if you're thinking that maybe you are ready for something different, look and see how you can make a plan. Start looking for a different job. You start saving up some money so that if you do decide to take some time off or to switch, either if you have something else lined up or you've got a cushion where you can do that, but just consider if you're living your life for you. That was a huge shift for me to becoming happier was to quit my job. It was probably the biggest piece of my life. Not probably, it was the biggest piece of my life. My job was my priority. And I am embarrassed and sad to look back and say that because I'm really big on relationships, but I was willing to sacrifice my own marriage and personal relationships for my job. I'm really disappointed that I got so wrapped up in climbing the ladder and being successful that I allowed more important things to fall to the wayside. So, in addition to that, I had to do a lot of self reflection and evaluation to look at generational trauma as well. I talked to my siblings. I have four of them, and I've gotten reconnected because for a couple of us, we had really drifted apart just due to life and some things. And it was incredible, actually, to get back in touch with everybody and to have a relationship with them. And I don't live close to three of them. They live out of state. I live closer to my brother, and we do try to get together now more often and for holidays and things, which is awesome. But there are things that you pass down that were passed down from your great grandparents to your grandparents to your parents to you. And if you have children, it's like they go into your own kids. And it's not intentional. It's not meant to be malicious. They're not trying to ruin your life or give you trauma or give you mental illness and things that you need to deal with, but they themselves, they as in your parents and their parents and so on, it's something that happens in lives that we don't know any better. And so that's what you do. And you share what you know down to those that you are responsible for, and then they don't know how to do anything different, and so then they pass it down and you just keep passing it. And it could be limiting beliefs, it could be mental illness, it could be trauma and cycles of pain. And it's something that, again, if you believe in spirituality and that we do live multiple lives, sometimes things happen in past lives. It's karmic debt. Did something in one life, you have to pay for it in another life. And so maybe now you have these wounds or these beliefs that stem from something that happened back in the day, like way back before you could even remember. And it's likely that you don't remember. And there are many people out there who can help with these things. There are shamans, there are spiritual guides, there are people who are very psychic and have very connected abilities to help you work through those beliefs if you have them. And I love that. I am a very logical person. I worked in corporate for 20 years, and I am somebody who is just very intellectual, but I am getting very much more in touch with my spiritual side, and there is a way to bring them both together. you've got your mystic and your mundane, and they both exist at the same time, above and below. Everything is happening at one time, and you tend to relate a little bit more to one side or the other. But there is a mix of both, and I love being able to blend that. So even if you're somebody who is, I am rooted in science, I am rooted in logic, congratulations. Spirituality is also rooted in quantum physics and science. So it's real. It sounds woo woo. I use that term a lot because that's what I hear people say. It sounds really flaky and spacey and goofy, and it's not. Actually, I think people who are more spiritual are doing it better because they are much happier and able to see things more clearly than we are because I feel like we've been brainwashed. This is not a conspiracy theory podcast. I'm not trying to share conspiracies, but I really do think that the way that we are living our lives, it's because this is what we've been brought up and conditioned to do, and it benefits those in power. And if you start to wake up and see things and get more connected to nature and other people and our relationships and not view it's an us versus them, it's a we are all together. And when you start viewing things differently, you feel differently and you start to prioritize differently. And that's one of the reasons why my priorities have changed so much. But part of it is there might be this generational trauma that has happened that people are carrying and that they are dealing with or not dealing with. That's typically how it happens. We don't deal with it because either A, we don't know that it exists or we don't know how to pinpoint it or what it is, or B, we know what it is, but it's really uncomfortable and we don't do discomfort very well. So let's just pretend it doesn't exist and move forward. And it's going to pop up in other ways and it's going to be something that we have to deal with at other times. And so maybe it's emotional unavailability. Maybe it is a family that discourages being vulnerable and sharing feelings and talking about problems. Let's just pretend that everybody is happy and that we are a perfect family and that nothing is wrong. And we don't learn how to deal with conflict and we don't learn how to deal with emotions. And then we are perfectionists as we grow up who don't know how to handle differences of opinion and we shut down and we're people pleasers and we are dealing with a lot of anxiety and mental illness. Like that's something that comes from generational trauma. And again, it's not intentional. Your parents aren't saying, let me see if I can give you some lifelong wounds to carry or deal with. They didn't know how to deal with it either. No one taught them. And if they didn't know better, then they pass it down. And so my thing is if you recognize it for what it is, if you know it, if you see it, it is your responsibility to deal with it. Whatever that looks like. Maybe it's going to therapy, maybe it's getting in touch with the spiritual side, maybe it's doing some shadow work, which is dealing with the stuff that you pretend doesn't exist and it's all internal. You've got to face those demons. And I say demons not in a religious way, it's just more of like those things that are bothering you that you pretend aren't happening. So those inner demons that you have, if you don't deal with them, you will pass them on. And then your kids and your other people will be dealing with them their own time. So if you are recognizing it, it's your responsibility to start to address it and break the generational trauma and say, you know what, the way we've been doing things isn't working for me. And I really want to make things different. This may not make you popular at family functions. And that's something that you have to decide whether or not you are okay with. It may not make you comfortable in these environments where everybody else wants to stay the same because, again, it's familiar, it's painful, but I'm comfortable in that pain because I know what to expect from it. And it's so much better than being surprised by whatever might come if we change it. If you are somebody who is no longer willing to tolerate that familiarity and you want to change things, it might cause some problems. But that's being a leader to stand up and say, this isn't something I want. This isn't something I like, and it's not how I want to continue to live my life. And so I'm going to make changes. And you will likely lose some people who are, or at least were, important to you. And that will be hard, especially if you are somebody who is a people pleaser, who has attachments, who is codependent, really just cares. If you're empathetic and you really care about people, it is hard to let them go. But it takes awareness, it takes courage, and it takes action. And so it means to redefining success and happiness on your terms. It means setting boundaries. And sometimes the boundaries that are hardest to keep are the boundaries we set for ourselves, but also practicing self-compassion to choose growth over guilt. It's trying to heal the wounds instead of repeating them and passing them on. It's acknowledging. Sometimes it's just awareness and acknowledgement. It is also not pointing fingers. Now, sometimes there are families, parents, grandparents, whomever, who do inflict physical pain. They are abusive, they are emotionally abusive, they do things intentionally. I'm not forgiving that. It comes from a place of brokenness themselves, but it does not excuse it. Period. So if you have parents or grandparents who were emotionally or physically abusive, that is sad and terrible, and I'm sorry. It does not excuse it. But if they weren't physically abusive, they just didn't know how to meet me where I needed to be met. They didn't know how to meet my emotional needs. They were not open to feelings. And if it's something like that, you can't point fingers because they also didn't know any better and they might not have had the resources and tools and the ability to address it. And so now where they feel like they have reached the ceiling, that should now be your floor. You from here you move on. They could only get to this far, and now that you know that, you can continue to grow. They did not have some of the abilities and resources that we have now, and it may not have been socially permitted or acceptable to talk about these things in the past. You don't have to carry the burdens of your past generations. You can choose to be the one who breaks that cycle and builds new legacies. You can build a family foundation of healing, of self love, of empowerment, forgiveness. Give yourself some grace, give yourself some self compassion because it's hard. When everything that you've learned and everything that you were told that's still not the right way to do things, it is hard to break away from what is familiar, and it's hard to feel like maybe you're disappointing people or that you're telling people that what they were doing was wrong. And it's not wrong, again, intentionally, but it's just not right. And if you know that that's not what you want, then you need to move forward. And that's leadership, to be the one to say, I would like to create a new future. I would like to create new patterns. I don't want to subscribe to the way that we've always done things just because that's what we've always done, because it isn't what I want anymore. It's not saying that everything was bad or that everything was negative. It's not. Things may have been really fantastic and wonderful in certain situations, but at the end of the day, if you don't feel like it's what you want and what you want to perpetuate, you don't have to. Break those generational curses. And then the thought here too is to create an aligned and happy life for yourself. Look at what success means to you. And success, again, could be professional success, it could be personal success. It's what you want, what makes you happy. Now, I mentioned earlier, I lead a pretty boring life in the grand scheme of things. I'm not doing anything crazy. We used to do some travel pre-COVID, and then COVID happened. So traveling has not happened the way it used to. And so for me, success is living a life where I don't have to wake up and work for somebody else anymore. And success and happy means that I can take random days and times off to focus on my family and my pets, and I can take care of me and my mental health. So surround yourself with people who uplift you, support you, who empower you, make you feel engaged and alive and happy, and not people who drain you or discourage you or are competitive with you. Take some bold action towards your dreams. What does that look like for you? What are your dreams? Did you always want to be doing what you're doing, or did you want to do something totally different? And if it's totally different, are you even doing a fraction of that? So maybe you wanted to be a professional artist. Are you painting? Are you drawing? Are you doing whatever art you like to do? Because even if you're not making money on it or doing it full time, are you at least making time to do it on the weekend? Define what success is for you. Not what your family tells you, not what your family wants for you, not what society says is the right thing. Define success, define happy. Prioritize you, your mental state, your emotional state, your well being. Does that mean mindfulness, therapy, professional development, personal development? I don't know. Maybe. Look into what you need to do to feel more whole, because a lot of times we're walking around feeling like partial selves. We're the husks of what we should be. And if you're feeling like a husk, figure out why. And then look at resources. Go to Google and figure out what resources are there to help you to fill in whatever it is that you feel needs to be fixed. Is it professional therapy? Is it doing some meditation? Is it doing some exercise? Is it learning a new skill? Is it picking up that paintbrush and starting your art again? But celebrate your baby wins. Celebrate all the little wins. Little things that make you happy, acknowledge them. Joy and gratitude are two of the highest vibrational feelings that you can have. And when you live in a high vibration, you raise your overall vibration and you start to attract things that are on higher vibrations as well. But when you are feeling jealous and you're feeling depressed, those are low vibrational energies. And then you align with things that are at the same frequency. So you're also vibing with things that are low frequency. Get out of that low energy, that low vibration period, and be in a more positive space where you're happy. It's where you're thankful. It's where you are feeling joy. It's where you're feeling excited. And so when you start to feel those higher vibrational things, you start to attract things that are also higher vibrational. So like brings in more like. And if you enjoy feeling that way, then you will enjoy attracting these people and things. So some final thoughts. Leadership is not about a job or a career. Leadership is about being a person who stands up for what they want and believe and for other people and who do the right thing. And it's choosing growth sometimes over comfort, healing the things that sometimes we don't even know are broken or damaged. You might not know the root cause, but you will find the symptoms. If you are always depressed, always anxious, if you feel like you are constantly in self doubt or people pleasing mindsets, it's caused by something. We don't just fall into those for no reason. There's usually something that causes us to be there. And if you need to work with somebody, again, whether it's spiritually or mental health wise, like in therapy, to get to the root of it, you can usually get to the root. And then the biggest challenge, though, is once you find that root, what do you do with it? Do you just keep doing it because it's familiar and comfortable? Or do we say, oh, I need to address that? Because addressing it is hard, especially if addressing it means you have to challenge people that are in your life who are upholding those beliefs and those behaviors. So you don't have to follow any kind of predefined path. You can and should want to live a life that is authentic and fulfilling and free for you. And what you pick is probably not going to look like what I pick. And that is okay. Leadership in real life is about taking ownership of your life and being a leader and going after what it is that you want and need. So, if you have any thoughts, I would love to hear them. And I hope that this has encouraged you to at least make one tiny change in the right direction, whatever that might be for you. But thanks for listening, and I will catch you next time on Leadership in Real Life.